All right, everybody, welcome back to Culz Interviews. Today we're going to talk about a lot of cool things, sacred numbers, Egypt, amongst a host of other topics. And thankfully, our guest Michael Feeley, he has quite a bit of knowledge, between his books or just different talks I've listened to. I think we're going to have a very good conversation, but I'm going to turn it over to him, let him introduce himself as well as kind of give his background and how he kind of got down this pathway.
No, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. A little bit about my background. I was a UK police officer for 17 years. It should have been a 30-year career, but at year 17, a lot of things happened to me, which I'll get into in a little while. But I was basically on the front line on patrol, dealing with all the emergency calls, non-emergency calls, dealing with your routine day to day, dealing with various levels of crime, investigating various levels of crime, teaching or being taught how to follow the evidence, how to then gather that evidence, see where it takes you, see what it says, because sometimes it's contrary to what people are saying, and then put that into a nice package to go and present that in front of judge and jury in a court. So I tend to write and speak in a very succinct, to the point way. But that 17 years of investigative training kind of taught me how to piece that evidence together. Now, in 2009, which was year 17 of a 30-year career, I began to experience a lot of, should we say, paranormal, supernatural things, literally on a daily, nightly basis. And as a result of being introduced into other worlds, going to other places, actually visiting these places, then I was never going to be the same person as I once was. So my old outlook, my whole life, my whole perception of what reality was and what the world was completely changed. And it changed sufficiently enough for me to no longer feel a part of that career any longer. And that kind of led to my subsequent resignation. From that point, I continued to be a frequent experiencer, a multiple experiencer. No matter wherever I went in the world, no matter whatever I did, where I was, something would present itself, something would happen. And that then began to diminish a little bit, but it then changed. So I was still getting daily events, but it would be the like of quantum equations in my head. It would be mathematical equations that I brought back with from a dream state. It would be ancient advanced knowledge that was being formed into some kind of blueprint inside my head so that I could work out the ancient world. I was seeing advanced technology that is not ours, that was being shown to me, literally physically in this dimension. So it was really just a strange period of my life in terms of it had gone a complete 360. It had gone from a structured career, I knew what the future held, I knew what I was going to be doing this time next week, to just complete, let's just go with it and see where it goes. And as a result of that, I'm now sitting here speaking to you on a Saturday.
Well, we appreciate you taking time away from your Saturday to come join us and talk to our audience and fill them in on all your knowledge. Now, before you had your experiences, what were your thoughts on the paranormal? Like, did you have all these different thoughts of the paranormal? Like, it could be real, or were you like, nah, it wasn't real? Like, how did that form?
Well, I was always open-minded, even though I don't recall from a younger age having any of those experiences, although I was acceptant of pretty much everything. It was just my natural state that who am I to say these things don't exist? Who am I to question what people are experiencing? And even from the age of 6, 7, 8 years of age, I'd be sitting there watching the Charlton Heston Ten Commandments movie, and I'd be asking myself adult questions. Can this happen? How did it happen? If it did happen, when, where, how? All of these adult questions in a young mind. And at the same time, I was getting school reports from my teachers, pretty much saying that I was a very substandard child. So I was always very, very open to it, although I don't recall any sort of experience of that nature. And then when I began to experience, because I was so accepting of it, I think it wasn't such a shock as it may well have been had I been very, very close-minded.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. it's a much easier transition into that life if you have an open mind. So you kind of brought up like the Ten Commandments, and I know in one of your stuff you were talking about like Jesus and what really that meant. Do you want to kind of go into that?
Yes, what we have is really history that is an authorized lie in many respects. Now, whether that's religious, whether that's historical fact, it has all been manipulated for a certain end result. And you have, should we say, a group of people who have nominated themselves as being elite, who have nominated themselves as being the chosen, and they also nominated themselves as the only ones who should be in receipt of this sacred knowledge, and that everybody else are basically vulgate, they're insignificant, they are not worthy for this kind of advanced knowledge. So when you start looking at biblical characters and characters of other religions, which are amounting to the same thing anyway, just under a different name, you'll see that they come from a much earlier civilization, and that civilization is what we call Egypt. So you have the Bible, which the original Bible is the Giza Plateau, and you have the likes of Pythagoras and Socrates, who were initiates of the mystery schools, and they took that knowledge to the likes of Greece. You have the Hebrew mysticism, which is the Kabbalah, that has taken Egyptian knowledge and corrupted it to their own means, which has then become the Hebrew division, which is the scriptures we know as the Bible. And you have the likes of Emperor Constantine that decided what people would be taught as a Christian religion. When you bring critical thought into the equation, you begin to see things with a little bit more clarity, such as if Jesus is never described in the Bible, and he isn't because I've checked, then where does this famous accepted appearance come from? Because it's someone who is nondescript. So therefore it must be a creation of someone. And it is the creation of the church that has taken this depiction and said, this is what Christ looks like. Now everybody has accepted that that is what Christ looks like. When I speak to members of my family who are, one of them in particular is a Jehovah's Witness, and she tells me that unless I follow Jehovah come Armageddon, then I shall perish with the rest of humanity that doesn't follow Jehovah. Now when you get to the essence of the story, they tell me that Satan and his angels was thrown out of heaven by God to earth, where they began to create and cause chaos and our downfall. So the downfall and the chaos that's in the world is God's fault. So therefore, why am I being exterminated for something that is God's fault, based on their logic? So when you start, say, bringing critical thought into the mass, you can blow some of these stories away out of the water. When you have the likes of Christ, it is a personification of a Gnostic Illuminati knowledge. And that Gnostic Illuminati knowledge is how we reach the promised land. So in other words, the illuminated mind, which happens in Golgotha, the place of skulls. Now the whole story of Christ, as I say, has a basis of Gnostic knowledge, but it was made into a person. Now the reason that it was made into a person is that St. Paul wanted to, should we say, bring down the Church of Rome, the Roman Empire. But he wasn't able to do it militarily because they were too strong. So he decided on his road to Damascus, he had this bright idea, which was, I'm going to create this God on earth, and in doing so, I'm going to get the Gentiles and Jews alike to follow me and basically turn their back on Rome. Now 350 years after this idea, Rome converted to Christianity and we had the downfall of the Roman Empire, so it worked. Even though it was many hundreds of years, it still worked. So we have St. Paul, who is Saul in Hebrew, had this idea to create this character based on previous existing Illuminati knowledge. And as a result, the world even today, billions of people today, still believe the hoax fabrication. Even Pope Leo X said, it has served us well, this myth of Christ. So what you have, as I say, is this character that brought down Rome eventually, which became a rival to the John the Baptist cult, which has its origins in Egypt as well, with Osiris and Orion and Isis and all of these things. But you have this royalty where the likes of the Merovingians, the likes of the Knights Templars, the likes of the Priory of Sion were Johannites, basically followers of John the Baptist, Osiris. And you then had this Jesus cult that rivaled them, that basically mocked them in a biblical scripture, and Jesus became the superimposed Messiah. So that really, in a nutshell, is your Christmas. It is a fabrication of the Apostle Paul, and it was to bring about the downfall of Rome, deliver us from evil, is deliver us from the evil one, which is the Roman Empire.
Very, very interesting. You mentioned the mystery schools, and that's something when we were talking with one of the Masons, he mentioned, and all the viewers were like, "Can you go in more in depth?" And I was a bad host, so I didn't ask. So I was wondering if you could maybe explain what those were.
The mystery schools, yeah. See what you have, even within Masonry, comes from an earlier, again, Illuminati Gnostic knowledge, and a lot of the Knights Templar knowledge, which came from other places, is incorporated within modern day Masonry. Now, there's many different degrees of Masonry, and depending upon what degree you are at, depends upon your level of understanding. Because what you have is some of the symbols you can actually see behind me, but if you just join the Brotherhoods, and you are your first, your second, your third Master Mason levels, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth, and whatever, you are shown the symbols, and you are given an interpretation of the symbols, but it is not an accurate interpretation of the symbols, because it is not intended that you will understand what they mean. It is intended that you will think that you understand what they mean. And it's only when you get to adeptship that you actually begin to really understand what they mean. And there are many different symbols that even the Brotherhoods have misunderstood. Now, when you go back to the ancient mystery schools, such as Egypt and different places, there were select people that were chosen. Uh, the word Moses really is a title for an initiate. So you go around, and this has happened to me as well, but you will have people that will look and will observe, and there'll be people that stand out to them, and they will take them to one side, and they will start to nurture them, and they'll start to introduce them to different things, to more things, and they begin to, should we say, expand them and advance them and lead them in a certain direction of knowledge that the masses are not entitled to know or don't know or never taught. So the whole system of mystery school is really choosing the people who you are believe are worthy to be in receipt of this advanced universal knowledge, this hermetica. And that really is the principle of the mystery schools. And that's really, a lot of it comes from ancient Egypt, and ancient Egypt is far more ancient than you believe it is, because a lot of people use the mainstream evaluation of how ancient Egypt is. But I've dated the Great Pyramid as nearly 74,000 years old using Egyptian star code, so it is much older than you think. So a lot of these other civilizations have taken a lot of their guidance from this land we call Egypt, but it is really underground teachings of the true mysteries of the universe, and a lot of that is hidden in symbolic form, and that really is your mystery schools and your initiates, and your being taken away from society to be taught the true nature of your existence.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Do you want to go in a little bit more depth on the Egyptian star codes and like how you figured that out.
Yep, basically the original science is the stars, because science really is observing and taking information from your observation. Now, the first thing that man ever observed was the stars, and he noticed that at certain times of the year or the month or whatever, a certain star would be in a certain part of the sky. And if you were able to go to your people as a pharaoh, as a high priest, and you were able to say with a degree of perfection, on such and such a date, the rivers of the Nile will rise, and you will have crops for 3 months. On such and such a date, the waters of the Nile shall recede, and there will be barren lands for 3 months. And if you were able to speak in this way, then your people who don't have this knowledge will turn around and say, well, he must be a god, because only gods can have this kind of information, and we're seeing it for ourselves. It is accurate. So prophets were really star readers. They were able to understand the celestial narrative. So in terms of the Egyptians, you have the pyramid, and they have 360-year cycles, and we are now in the 17th 360-year cycle, which means the return of ancient knowledge to modern society. That's when it was timed to come back into the world, 2001 our time, which is the 17th 360-year cycle. So what I did is I took this theorem of 360-year cycles, and I put that with the mathematics of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and in doing so, it revealed a very, very ancient date as to its existence, and that is pretty much how I got the age of the pyramid. Now, there's only one person in the world who I know has come anywhere near the same type of dating as me, and that is a person called Billy Myers, who is a Palladian channeler. And it was the Palladians that told him that the pyramids were nearly 74,000 years old. My calculations are that they are 73,440 years of age. So we are very, very close, but we are the only two people in the world who I've ever known to come anywhere near the true dating of the Great Pyramid. And it is star codes and the mathematics of the Great Pyramid that reveal that date to me.
Yeah, definitely far older than the 2,500 years, right? So, I mean, another thing with pyramids, I think a lot of people think there was like mummies in them, but as far as I know, there was never a mummy found in any of the pyramids. Isn't that correct?
We are told that they were burial chambers. They're not burial chambers. They are part. Again, there's no one reason for anything, but primarily they are basically a star map for the human race to get back home. They mark where we're from, and it is part of a much larger set of pyramids. There's about 50 pyramids, and each and every one of them is a different star, and they are telling us how to get back. We have a trail of breadcrumbs that are not only around this Earth, but on planets of the solar system, such as Sidonian City on Mars. The face on Mars is where we come from. It is telling us where we're from. There is a star system near to the Pleiades that is called a solar trinity, and that is where the advanced ancestors have come from, and they have left this clue in the monuments and monoliths of the world. And if you follow the star map on the ground, we can find our way back home, and that is what they've left for us.
Well, and when you're talking about like the advanced ancestors, did they come here? Are you saying about 74,000 years ago, or was it much older than that?
It must have been before that, because they were responsible for many of the monoliths and monuments around the world. Even the likes of Stonehenge is also the Key of Solomon, and the Key of Solomon relates to Orion and Orion's belt, which, as we know, the three main pyramids of the Giza Plateau are aligned to Orion's belt, which is the Key of Solomon. And it is the Key of Solomon that opens the door for our way back home. So they would have been here longer than that date, because they would have been building this map of the stars on the ground for us to follow back. And when people ask me what do I think aliens are, well, they are advanced humans. Simple as. Simple as. And we are leaving messages for them, in such as the likes of the obelisk. The obelisk is part of this solar trinity of our origins, and it is saying to people who are looking from the skies down, we understand the secret here. So they would have been here before that dating, because they were responsible for the star map on the ground.
No, very, very interesting. Another kind of ancient relic that we've kind of touched on here was the Shroud of Turin. Do you want to kind of go more in depth on that? Because I was listening to that one earlier today and I found that very interesting.
The Shroud of Turin, it is not Christ, because, as I've said, Christ is a personification of existing knowledge that has been moulded into a walking God on earth. Because the only way that you could get anyone to follow would be that if this person was a god on earth, and everyone then follows. So the Shroud of Turin is not Christ. Some will say that it is Jacques de Molay, who is the Grand Master of the Knights Templars, who was crucified in the same way as Christ was allegedly crucified. And we are saying, again, the image that is on the Shroud of Turin is consistent with the image of Christ, who is never described in the Bible. So straight away, when you start seeing, should we say, a uniformity, a conforming image of something that has been made up by the church, now we suddenly have this image on this Shroud of Turin that miraculously matches, then you can start to say there's a little bit more to it than meets the eye. What you are seeing, in essence, with the Shroud of Turin is one of the very first photographs. And when people say, well, photographers didn't happen until the Victorian times and this, that, it was the first photograph, is the Shroud of Turin. And when you look at it as a negative, you will see what looks to be a decapitation. Now that relates to John the Baptist, and that relates to Osiris, who was decapitated and chopped up into 14 pieces by his brother Set. That then leads you to the Johannites, the Knights Templars. So the Shroud of Turin is one of the first photographs ever, and the person who comes to mind historically that was allegedly one of the first to design the helicopter, all of the different things, is Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci spent time with the Shroud of Turin, and he developed the first photograph. It is a forged document, and that is your Shroud of Turin. And it was dated, carbon dated, but the carbon dated was taken from the outside, not where you need to take the carbon dating, which is from the middle. So it is basically a photograph, and it is a forgery. It's almost like an ancient Photoshop, shall we say.
Yeah, no, very interesting stuff. I'm going to hand it off to Sam here first before I keep going, just because I have a bad habit of taking over interviews and I don't want to not let them get in their questions. So, Sam, I'll turn it over to you and you can ask some of your questions.
I honestly don't have one at the moment because I'm just trying to take it all in for a second. So, Andrew, you can go ahead.
All right.
Give me a second.
So this star map, the star keys, that is something that really interests me, where there are signs to point back to where we all came from.
Yes.
And what you said, you deciphered it. How do you what algorithm do you use? What formula is it that you would use to be able to calculate such a thing, like pyramids being 74,000 years old and stuff like that?
This information was taken by the Hebrew mystics, and it was hidden in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were later hidden in Muslin Chapel in Scotland, and it formed the Hebrew lunar calendar. So this Hebrew calendar came from Egyptian star movement, but the Egyptians, as I say, had a 360-year cycle, and the 17th of that is our year 2001, in which this knowledge comes back into play. but they had a 360-year cycle. Now, if you look at the 360-year cycle, and then you look at the diameters and the course levels of the Great Pyramid, and you do mathematics, hidden mathematics, it reveals the 73,440 years. Now, as I say, there's only one other person in the world that has come anywhere near that calculation, and that's Billy Miles, who was told through a channeled message, which is consistent with the dating that I've come across. So if you understand and you get yourself in the mind of the mystics who are putting these things together, you begin to think like them, see what they see, and begin to speak the same way as they speak. And it's got to a stage now, at least, where I can just look at something and there's an innate knowing of what that means. And that is the same with the Egyptian star codes. I've done basically mathematics based on 360-year cycles of the Egyptian star codes, and that has given me the date of the Great Pyramid, which, when you look at the Sphinx of Egypt, when you look at the face on Mars, which mathematically are a perfect match, they mark where we're from. It is a star map on the ground, as above, so below. And they tell us how to get back there if we decipher the codes that they've left. If we follow the breadcrumbs that they've left for us, then we find our way back. And one of the biggest secrets that is kept from humanity is that it is actually the whole of humanity who is the chosen race. It is not the select few who claim to be the chosen race. So humanity has been swayed away from its true history, the fact that we are all the chosen race. And at some point, if we follow the codes, if we follow the map, we will go back. And this trail of breadcrumbs is not only on Earth, as I've said, it's on other planets of the solar system, particularly Mars. Now, when you look at the word Cairo, and you look at that coming from Al-Qahira means a place like Mars. We are being given all the clues. It just takes someone to sit down and dedicate enough time to put the clues together. This massive jigsaw puzzle. And over the last 10 years or so, I've put this jigsaw together, and I can now see the whole picture. And these are really the basics or the bases upon which I've come to the conclusions.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And spiritually, how do we get to that point as a whole to be able to come together and complete this?
First of all, we have to really, when we have a question, we have to stop listening to the conclusions of the gurus and the parrot fashion in which everyone seems to repeat the same thing. What we have to do is we have to hold on to the question until we've experienced the answer for ourselves. When we begin to understand exactly what we are, then we begin to realize what has been kept from us, because what has been kept from us is who we are. And we're all divine, we're all sovereign, we all come from the same place, we are all of the same bloodline. Now, when you look at the Bible, there's a person, Abraham's wife, named Sarah, who the Bible says is basically the bloodline of Earth. Now, when you take that to a more advanced level and you actually begin to decipher what the name Sarah means, it means one blood. So we are all one blood. We are all one bloodline. There is no such thing as the elites are a different bloodline, so they're better than everyone else. You know, we are the chosen people. Well, the people who are claiming to be the chosen people are the ones who have written that they're the chosen people. It's like me writing a book now for you, expressing how brilliant I am, and people accepting it, because you are seeing a reflection of their own belief system, which is not correct. So people need to begin to question, they need to begin to experience and feel the answer. They need to begin to realize that there's a hidden language going on all around them that's being kept from them. And this language is spoken openly in the public. If I was to go to the States and speak to many American people, and I was to say, what's that? Many people, and they have done, would say, well, it's what our president does. You know, we are told it means he loves us. You know, that's a symbol our president does, without knowing or having any clue as to what that means. Because what that means is there is much to see and hear, but there is little to be published. That's what that means. Now, every time your president, whoever that is, comes out into public and does all of these symbols, he's saying that there's things that we know that we're never going to tell you. And these things are openly symbolised. If anybody who's listened to this watched the current King Charles III coronation, it was absolutely rife with rival secret society battles going on in a public place symbolically, because there's this hidden language that people need to understand, and when they understand codes, symbols, allegories, parables, nothing can be hidden from them anymore. All of this symbology that you see behind me is there for a specific reason. It is because it means something. You have the Vitruvian Man, you have the Last Supper, a Knights Templar chalice, Egypt, the Mona Lisa. I didn't put them there just because they're paintings. I put them there because there's a hidden language. And when you understand that hidden language, you can begin to interact with the minds of those who have put that language in there. And that is how you start to decode and decipher the ancient meanings. But people need to, in essence, realise who they are, stop subduing their own divinity by bowing down to earthly figures, stop worshipping gods that don't exist, stop worshipping characters that were created by the church for them to worship, because they are basically taking people away from where the true salvation is themselves.
As a human race, do you think we'll ever be able to come together like that, like in the near future, or do you think it would be never?
On the face of it, it will take a long time, because what we have really is an evolution, and that the nature of the universe is a cycle, and we see cycles in nature, cycles in life, cycles in everything that we do. That is a cycle. So in terms of people and their spiritual development, there is also a cycle, and it can sometimes for them be a slow evolution, because you know, if you don't get it, then you get another chance, and you get another chance, and you get another chance until you do. So you will continue on the merry-go-round until you step off it. But there is a known way in which to bypass the slowness of evolution, which is to learn the knowledge of the mystics, because that then gives you the path of least resistance, which is the parting of the Red Sea of the Moses story. No longer will you walk in the wilderness, you'll go from captivity to the promised land through the path of least resistance, the open sea, and you will bypass the slowness of evolution. So on the face of it, people have quite an evolution, quite a revolution still to go. But there is the possibility of split timelines, because timelines and dimensions are frequency. And if you match a frequency of a particular dimension or a particular timeline, then you will be in that place. So there is a possibility that people who are developing spiritually, maturely and getting there will be in a different space, will be in a different timeline. And then those who eventually get it will then join us, because it can no longer continue to be the case that the people who are really trying, the people who are trying to do everything they can to better themselves, to advance themselves, to understand the experience, they can no longer be held back by the so-called ignorant masses who are just not getting what is obvious, because it's unfair. So there has to be a provision for expansion of some and the patience for others.
Thank you for so much for those answers there. It's hearing you speak is it's inspiring. But I'm gonna go ahead, hand it back off to Keegan. I'm sure he's got some more questions, and then we might come back to Sam here.
Well, I think Sam might have a question.
It's kind of like a two-parter, but one is I'm curious about like the Sphinx and its meaning, and then also I did come across something that said that the Sphinx was actually older than the pyramids are.
That depends on what time frame you are giving for the pyramids, because what you have is a message in its entirety, and it's not just the Giza plateau that is the whole message. It is part of the message. There are 50 pyramids in Egypt, and each one of them represents a particular star or star system. So the Giza plateau, which everybody focuses on for valid and obvious reasons, but that is only one small piece of the jigsaw, of the star map. So depending upon what time frame you are given for the Sphinx and for the Great Pyramids depends upon your belief system. What I can say is they would be round about the same, because they form the same message. In the same way, if you look at the face on Mars, which I've said basically demonstrates to us that there is a race of our likeness, and that race of our likeness is where we originate from, and that is marked by Sidonian City, the 50 pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge. All of these places mark this particular place of origin. So when you look at the face on Mars and you look at the mathematics of the face on Mars, it tells you precisely in its longitude and latitude coordinates how to find Stonehenge. When you look at the Great Pyramid, if you look at the longitude and latitude mathematics of the Great Pyramid, it tells you how to find the five-sided pyramid on Mars. So what you have really is a mathematical satellite navigation system. So if the face on Mars, which has been dated extremely old, tells you how to find these monuments on Earth and vice versa, then presumably they must be round about the same time, because they're telling you how to find each other. Not only their own precise location, but if I'm on the face of Mars and I understand this satellite navigation system through the numbers, through mathematics, I can be on the face of Mars and I can know exactly and precisely how to find Stonehenge in England. If I'm at Stonehenge, I know how to find the face on Mars. If I'm in Giza, I know how to find certain places on the Sidonian City. When you take a map overlay of Sidonian City and you put it over Avebury in England, which is where Stonehenge is, it is an exact map replica. You get the map of Sidonia, you put it over Avebury in Wiltshire, England, and it matches exactly. You have Silbury Hill by Stonehenge, which matches exactly the altar of witness, the mound on Mars. So these monuments must be, by that obvious deduction, round about the same age as each other, because they all form part of the same message.
Very
Do they
interesting.
explain it all with the statues on Easter Island at all, or no?
The statue on Easter Island again is a message of illumination of the mind. So you have what people believe to be 1,000 statues. Now, first of all, the number 1,000 means the conqueror, the self-master. That is the number that is attributed to the person who has conquered himself, who has mastered himself. That is why you have the likes of Buddha, which means enlightenment, has 1,000 lotus petal leaves on his head, which is the number 1,000 that is relevant. It is the conqueror. Now they all face, or predominantly they face east, which is illumination, where the sun rises. When we look at the east of the world, the likes of China, Japan, it is the Orient. They are Orientals. So what it is telling us is that we need to orientate ourselves to the direction of illumination. So why do you only see the heads of Easter Island? Because it is telling you to concentrate on the divine mind and not the body of senses. That's what they're telling you. Now that they are 33 feet high, when you go from foot to top of head, they are 33 feet as a statue. The number 33 is relevant in many ways. You know, you have 33 degrees of masonry, you have 33 vertebrae of the spine. You have the deepest level of meaning is that the key of Solomon, Orion, rises 33 degrees in arc degree in the sky. Now, when you have the sun at 12 noon above Orion, there is a stargate that opens in which pharaohs and high priests went through the gateway to become with their god Osiris in the duet, which is where we see the constellation of Orion. In Egypt, the word star means gateway. When you look at the 4th of July, when you look at the 25th of December, they are the only 2 days of the year in which our sun rises with this mysterious star that forms part of the solar trinity that is our origins. This is also mapped out in the land of the Vatican, and the Pope sees all this when he stands and he looks over at certain times. He sees the map of the sky on the floor. So all of these things are telling us that we can bypass this slow evolution to get back by learning the knowledge, learning the wisdom, becoming the mystic. And your Heads of Easter Island are yet another example of the message for us to do that.
So before I go into my question, I am really intrigued by the picture on your right, the Egyptian one. Could you describe that a little bit more? Because I just keep looking at it, and it's so interesting.
Basically, it is the Star of Bethlehem flower that is being passed to a lady who is sitting on a throne, which is Isis. Now you see the bull's horns and what looks to be a sun in the middle of the bull's horns. Taurus is pinnacle again in many ways. In zodiacal man, Taurus relates to the neck. In mystical Hebrew, in the Kabbalah tree of life, which I'm now doing with my hands, the neck is the gateway between the body to the head, the bridge to enlightenment, the neck. When you look at the word Pharaoh, it comes from the same word as neck. When you look at the word Anunnaki, it means long neck. It's relating to Taurus, in which the constellation of the Pleiades is in the neck of Taurus. So with so many mentions of the same word, you then begin to realize actually it's telling me something here. What it is telling you is part of your direction back is through the neck of the bull, the neck of Taurus, Orion and the Pleiades. You go through the neck of Taurus. These are the kind of things that they're telling us in this mystical way. Now the flower of light, basically it's kind of an aromatherapy. So you'll sniff on various plants and it will awaken you. When you see the famous ankh, you'll see a lot of the time that the ankh is up against someone's nostrils, because the ankh is basically a dual pulsator of energy, and the handle is a different energy to the top of the ankh. So you have this dual energy that goes through the nostril into the pineal and pituitary glands of the brain and enlightens you. That's what the ankh is. It is basically a mobile energy machine of dualistic polarized energy signals. So that's really, I mean, it goes a lot deeper. There's things that you can't see on there, but in essence, that's what it is.
Very intriguing. I know when it seems like there's a lot of connections with like the body, and like what's the connection maybe with like Atlas or Atlantis and stuff like that?
Well, Atlantis means the island of Atlas. So when you see Atlas holding up the sky, it is because Atlantis is in the sky. And what you have is the celestial waters, the oceans of the cosmos, which basically look like the oceans of the Earth. During the precession of the equinox, which is 25,920 years, it is called the Great Year, the precession of the equinox. During that time, there will be 7 different pole changes. Now, when you have a pole star, for argument's sake, Draco, and it then moves on to the next, then the previous one is said to sunk in the celestial waters. So if you imagine that when you've actually got through the 7 pole stars, they now have all sank into the celestial waters. Those 7 pole stars are your 7 islands of Atlantis that sink into the celestial waters as you go through the procession of the equinox. So that is what Atlantis is. It is the cosmic ocean and the pole stars. So a lot of the things that we are given stories for on the earth are happening in the sky. The same as Noah's Ark, the same as all of these, they are in the sky, the celestial waters, because that is what man observed. When you walk into an old church and you see a beautiful wooden ceiling, well, that is the Ark of Salvation, that is Noah's Ark, the Argo, the ship in the sky, which relates to Noah. Noah, in Latin, means to die and be reborn. In other words, the resurrection of self. They are reflecting basically the stars on the ground. That is Atlantis. It is the cosmic ocean.
All right. And so one thing we've heard about or talked about too was like time travel. And like, how do you think time travel could play into some of this?
Time basically means you, we, I learn. And time gives us a coordinate for us to be in a particular position in space. It keeps things separate. I've had a couple of experiences with what you would deem to be time travel, because what you have to understand is that the past, the now, and the future, yesterday, today, and tomorrow are the same thing. We just believe they are different. So a couple of my examples of time travel. In 2009, I consciously went back to Victorian England, where I witnessed a crime that had taken place, from my reckoning, 159 years previous. I was there, I was in the room, I witnessed it. In 2017, I was walking through a city and I heard a whoosh, kind of a whoosh sound. And even though I was in the same location, I felt as if I was in some kind of invisible bubble around me. And as I looked to my left, there was an Egyptian pharaoh walking alongside me. And not only could I see him from my perspective, from my left to his right, at the exact same time, I could see him walking towards me and I could see through his eyes. So I had a multi-directional view of this event. That is called spiritual concentration, where you are able to shift your awareness from yourself to the object that you are observing. In effect, you become the object that you're observing. And I've also experienced that when I've been looking at myself, looking at the object, because I've become the object looking at me, looking at it. And that is part of ancient Egyptian initiation in order to be able to do that. I've seen, should we say, historical characters who we are told through the books of history died in the 1400s, but I have seen them, I've interacted with them, because it is the same time, it is just a parallel event, but it is all happening now. And if you know how to, you can slip into other event times. There's a lot of times that we will slip into somebody else's event time and we will become the ghosts to them, but we don't even know that we've been there. But they will see us as a spirit, as a ghost. So a lot of the paranormal things that we see in our dimension are beings from other time events coming into our time in a pseudo appearance and then disappearing. And we say we've seen a ghost. Sometimes you may have, other times somebody's come from a different timeline, from a different dimension into your space. So it all belongs together in the same place.
I think we all enjoyed that. I watched all our expressions. I like how you explain time and like the ghost part where like it's just people from different times and it's just like a slippage of time. Do you think like, so when we talk about dreams, because obviously we all have kind of kooky dreams at times, but other times those are really realistic looking dreams, right?
Yeah.
Like what is the meaning behind that? Is that like a connection to another dimension? Are you being told information at that point? Like what is the purpose of those?
When you are not in a physical state, you are more expansive. So if there's anything that you need to know that will be too much for the physical, you can be taught it and be shown it in a dream state and bring it back as a kind of knowing. There's different sorts of dreams. You know, you have lucid dreams when you know that you're in a dream, but you're in a dream, which again I've experienced. There's dreams where you go to different places. We are all multi-locational. We are always in multiple places at once, but our awareness is only in one place. So when I close my head, close my eyes tonight and go to sleep, I have no awareness that this exists, because my awareness has shifted elsewhere to another aspect of me, somewhere else. And then when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes and I'm back in the room, my awareness has shifted from where I've been back here. So now my awareness is three-dimensional reality, this life. But we are in many places at once, and when we go to sleep or we go into a trance or we can actually shift our awareness to other aspects of ourselves. And that really is your dream. This is a dream. And when you realize that this is a dream, you move on to the next stage or the next level of the dream, because none of this is real.
And so do you think extraterrestrials are just trying to help us get there? Like the advanced beings, when they come here, they're just trying to help us maybe understand that and just help us grow spiritually and mentally and stuff like that?
My view of the positive extraterrestrials, of course, you have to have, in a universe of positive, negative and neutral, then when you get races of beings from other places, including Earth, you have the negative ones, the neutral ones and the positive ones. The positive ones for me are advanced us. They are advanced humans. And they've left these monuments, they've left these pyramids to tell us who we are and how to get back to where we came from. And they also come back to see us because, through certain things that we've created, certain monuments that we've created, we are basically inviting them back, saying, look, we know the secret, come back. So advanced aliens really are advanced humans who have come back to help, to guide. And when you see these craft in the sky, you have the ones who need craft to travel, but you have the ones that don't need craft to travel. And there's different levels of spiritual development in that statement. So the ones that do need the craft are not as developed spiritually as the ones who don't. Now, when you look at the likes of the phrase angels and demons, which became famous with Dan Brown's book Angels and Demons, what we're talking about with angels is visitors from other worlds. What we are saying about with demons are the stars. So angels and demons is saying visitors from the stars. And that is what they are. But they have a vested interest because they are us in what we believe to be the past, but it is really now.
Okay. And I know we're coming up on our hour time frame, so before I go that way, I just want to say, Andrew, Sam, do you guys have any other questions that have come up since we've kind of been talking some more topics?
I don't.
No. All right. So before we end off, though, I want people to be able to find you and your books and more information, because I know you got your website and everything. So do you want to let the viewers know how they can find you and help support you and learn more about this topics?
The best place really, if you type my name into anywhere, various things come up. But the best place to go really is my website, which is michael-feeley.com. On there's free blogs, there's free interviews, there's free videos, there's all kinds of stuff, and it also gives you links to all the different social media sites as well. So that really is probably the centre of everything. So that would be the best place to start. And there's lots and lots of information that people can just browse through and hopefully find out things.
And, the world's kind of in a turbulent state right now. There's a lot of things going on. Do you have any words of like positivity or just like positive, knowledge or something that you can help give to the viewers, just help brighten up their week and their days and their future?
The battle has already been won. We are actors still acting out the script. but the end credits have already gone. It was written that we would go into a golden age. It was ordained, it was written, it was prophesized. We have won the battle. We are just acting out the scenes. So don't worry, concentrate on your own development, learn everything you can, enjoy your life as much as you can. Why are we here? To have a good time. So do everything that makes you happy, and then you are doing what you came here to do.
I like it. Very positive. Well, thank you again, Michael, for taking time out of your day. We've enjoyed it, and I'm sure our viewers will, because it's been very fascinating for all of us. I could watch all our faces at points, and you could just see, the gears turning as you were putting out information, and it's just been so fascinating. So we'll definitely have to have you come back on and do this again if you want.
Anytime, just drop me an email and we'll get it arranged. But thank you all.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. You take care. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
So once again, we want to say thank you to Michael for joining us and bringing in some new ideas to some older topics that we've talked about. And hopefully each and every one of you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to either go to Michael's website or check that description below. We'll list all the links below in the description. But until next time, for more Culz interviews, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, is there a topic that was discussed today that you'd be interested in hearing more about the next time Michael comes on the show?